Hey, this is Meredith Elliott Powell, and welcome to Thrive, Turning Uncertainty to Competitive Advantage. This is the weekly LinkedIn Live where we dive in, we ask the experts, we ask the influencers, we ask the people going through the challenges just what it takes to really thrive in an uncertain marketplace. And I am super excited to not only have a powerhouse with me today, but somebody that I consider a friend and who's my accountability buddy, holds my feet to the fire of really making sure that I do what I need to do to thrive in an uncertain marketplace. So welcome, John. It's great to have you on. John Register.
Meredith, I am so excited to be on with you. Yes, I think it's the other way around. Because you're the one that holds my feet to the fire, that's for sure, my foot, and as we'll find out.
That's right, exactly. Well, just so that anybody listening knows, we hold ourselves accountable both from a work perspective and from a health perspective. But John, I want to dive in and talk about the things both that you're doing personally, but also you do such incredible work with clients about what it takes to thrive in an uncertain marketplace. But start off just by giving us a little bit of a background about you, who you are, what you do, and why we are joking about 1 foot.
Okay. So if for everybody that's out there, thanks so much for joining in. Meredith is such a gracious host, and wow, I just can't believe I'm on the show. So thanks. If you're in there and you're in the chat box, we want to shout her out, put her out there, because we are thriving in uncertain times right now. For me, think of my story as a riches to rags to riches story. I was a world-class athlete, 2 times went to the Olympic trials in the hurdles, and was all an Army, on my way to all Army officer. So I was going to become an Army officer. I was in the military, went to the Gulf War, and came back without a scratch. But on May 17, 1994, at 5:29 in the afternoon, when I was all these things, top-rated hurdler, top 20 in the world, top 10 in the United States, I went across a hurdle, dislocated my knee, severed the artery behind the kneecap, and 7 days later was faced with a choice, either to keep my leg and use a walker or a wheelchair for the rest of my life, or undergo an amputation and walk on a prosthesis for the rest of my life. Now, you can imagine what kind of choice is that? I mean, all my dreams were dashed, everything's gone. And it's kind of like what the environment we're in right now. How many of you all out there have felt as if this was a sudden stop? March was like, great, everything is going to go. And then 5:30 in the afternoon, boom, everything just shifts. And we're all at home and doing virtual and trying to figure it out. So I was really not really in a bad state, but I was going down a downward spiral.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to figure out, Meredith, who am I now? What's my identity? Will my wife still stay with me? Will my son still see me as his father? Do I still have a job in the Army? Can I support my family? I mean, my Olympic dreams are over.
Yeah.
And it was Alice, my wife, who says to me, you know what, John, we're going to get through this together. It's just our new normal. And when she spoke those words, I understood that the new normal is not what we mostly think about it as a destination. Well, I can't wait till we get back to normal, or things get back to normal, or when we reach the new normal. No, it's only a plateau to grow. So having amputated the leg and taken that choice and used to walk on a prosthetic for the rest of my life, I flipped my mindset around that and began to see what were the things that were possible. So to shorten it up, at 27 months after the amputation, I swam in the Paralympic Games, those games for athletes with physical disabilities and visual impairment. And then 6 years after the amputation, I returned to track running and won the silver medal in the long jump in Sydney, Australia. And so the profession right now is all about working with business professionals, business leaders that are out there in the community to help them hurdle the adversity, amputate the fear, embrace this new normal mindset so that we can win our medals in our lives again. And that's what we're doing, trying to push it in the face.
I love that. And I love the fact that, it really does come down to you having a choice. But, the premise of this show is really thriving in uncertainty. So when I say the word uncertainty, and how I came up with the idea is because a couple of years ago, I became obsessed with the word uncertainty. It is the research shows that we would rather know something bad is going to happen than have to live in all this uncertainty. So when I say the word uncertainty to you, what's your perspective? What comes up for you?
Wow, that's great. Meredith, for me, it really means a lack of control. Um, we don't have a grasp on the future when we thought we did have a grasp on the future. We thought we knew the quarterly earnings. We thought we knew what we were going to share with our stockholders. We came full stop, right? We thought we were going to go to sporting events all the time, the Super Bowl, the Olympics. We just had the U.S. Open. All these things we thought we were going to be going to, it's come full stop because our routines shifted. And that produces a lack of certainty in what we have control over. And so maybe that's the illusion, right? Maybe we think the illusion is we do have control, but somebody else is pulling the strings because we don't. And then we fight against it. We say we have to have our freedom. I got to get out there. I got to do but that might, as we were talking a little earlier before the show, if I choose to do that, and I don't even know I have this and go to COVID, have this virus, I may take that into a nursing home where my parents are. And then so my actions do have great impacts on somebody else. So I think that uncertainty word is really one that we're fighting for control, and maybe that's the illusion that we really don't have it. So how do we gain what we can back? What's the truth? What's foundational that we can hold on to if things don't, return back or go back the way we think they should?
It's one of our listeners here, Serena, said she doesn't think she's ever heard it summed up that well as to say a lack of a lack of control. But in the work that you do, I mean, it's everything from, you work so often with leaders and in organizations. What are some of the biggest challenges that you think businesses and business owners are facing right now?
Paralysis.
It's a big one, right?
It's a big one because, think about it, Meredith. So we are in a time where we're measured by what we can produce, our outputs, right? And so it's almost like a finite thing for us. Yeah. When we really need to be talking, like Simon Sinek says, as this infinite model, this infinite game model, that we're really not there in this as a finite space. And so I think the leaders that are struggling have this fixed idea of what it should look like, but we have never been in a time like this, at least not in our generation, right? There have been some others, but even they did not have a global perspective around it like we do, not as fast as we do, right? We have our cell phone devices. We can see any place in the world. We can get on YouTube, we can get on whatever the channel might be, LinkedIn. We can find what's going on around the world very quick if we choose to. And so we can see what everybody else is kind of doing and how it's impacting them if we choose to kind of open our eyes for it. But to identify what is holding the organization from thriving during this time, I think fear is the enemy.
Yeah. So what does somebody do? I mean, or what do you advise? I mean, because it's paralysis is, I've really been kind of amazed at the level of paralysis. And some people are really stuck. And quite frankly, if you're stuck right now, you're really going backwards. I mean, things are starting to pass you by. What is some of the advice? What do you tell people? How do you help people get unstuck?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you're right. You're exactly right. And I get it, because when I lost all my dates on the calendar, I was like, oh my God, what is happening? And I jumped into the game, this business of professional speaking or influence or whatever it is. I jumped into this game like in 2019. And started to rise. So I was doing a lot of investing in the company and the business, and then this hits. I had a great year lined up, and so I had to pivot. Right. So how do we do that? I got people relying on me for this, so I can't stay in this moment. And I really rely on past experiences, so I can draw strength and resilience from the time when I had to make that choice to amputate the leg. And I know that things will get better, but I have to do the work. I have to get in there and do it. And so what I often will tell people is, when you're feeling that paralysis, like I was this morning, I didn't want to get out of bed, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got this huge day ahead of me. I keep telling myself, just put the foot on the floor, hop over, brush your teeth, get it done, and get ready to get out and get moving. Just start moving. And so I talk about that from the standpoint of resilience with my clients, in that most people think of resilience as a rubber band kind of snapping back to its original shape. But what happens when your rubber band breaks, like my leg did, right? In that moment, you have to choose to figure out how you're going to develop a ritual. That ritual then will produce a rhythm, and the rhythm will elevate us to the rise that we want in our life. But getting moving is hard. And so I look at the word resilience as these 10 letters, and I equate them in my mind to 10 hurdles that are in a hurdle race,
Okay.
10 obstacles I have to overcome. And there might be more, but for resilience, that first R is that the R is stands for the ritual. So I'm always thinking about that. But the S is for what stories are we telling ourselves? And before we can tell our stories, there is a hidden gem inside of the word resilience. When the starter says, or the announcer says to the racers, quiet for the start, before the race begins, that gives a pause for every racer to go mentally into their mind to run that race a couple more times in their mind. But that word embedded in the word resilience also is the word silence. So we have to begin to hear our own voice first before we can actually move out. And I think that's what happens with leaders is we don't take that pause to really listen, whether it's meditation, whether it's prayer, whatever you do to get into that moment and that mindset, you have to take that time to do it so you can hear clearly the direction in which you need to advance. We call it linear expression in the hurdle race, straight down.
Yeah. I love that. There's a couple of things that are coming to mind for me in the work that I've been doing around thriving in uncertainty. One of the terms that I researched that came from the military, which I love, is called embrace the suck.
Yep.
And the idea is that you don't want to be an optimist. You don't want to act like everything's okay and life's going to be rosy in a matter of weeks. But you don't want to be so negative that you kind of give up. And embracing the suck is very much about being a realist, is to take a breath and say, this is where you are. Then I named my company Motion First, and it took years for me to give a name to my company. But I did that because I believe that the only way we make progress is through movement. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you wait to know exactly what's going to work or what's going to be perfect, you'll struggle with that, right?
Yeah,
but if you just take a step, I think sometimes we manifest in our heads that things are worse than they actually are. I got to say, though, I can't imagine having to make the choice that you made. And where did you muster the courage? Because I'm kind of fascinated, too, by what's the difference between people who are able to make those decisions and people who aren't? Like, what does that come from? What gave you the courage to do that?
Yeah, that was great. My male deductive reasoning said if I get rid of the leg, I'll get rid of the pain. It was as simple as that.
Okay. Well,
and I found out afterward there's this thing called phantom pain.
Oh,
which could be worse than the actual pain that you were in, and I'd experienced that as well. But that's a great point. Is that before these times come, what have you put in the bank in order to draw from when that challenge comes? And for me, I'm a believer. I'm a very strong Christian, and that, what I mean by that is I look at this as a person told me one time in a business class, professional business, this veterans business class. She says to everybody, 30 of us, "What's the most important thing you need to do in business?" She kind of prompted at us, and I was like, I don't know, marketing, build a team. All of us had the wrong answer. And then she said something brilliant. She said, it's how are you going to dispose of the business? How are you going to shut it down? Are you going to bequeath it to somebody else? You're going to put it in the family as a legacy? Are you going to put it on the stock market? What are you going to do with the business after you cease to be here? And I was like, wow, that takes into consideration that your business is successful.
right.
And it gives you a right mindset, a right framework for, embracing the suck, because every day is not going to be rosy, and you're going to have to get up and try to hop over to the, brush your teeth. The thing about it, though, is I began looking at that in life. What do I want the end of my life to look like? And for me, it was to hear my God say, well done, my good and faithful servant, and to enjoy my rest. So what does that mean for me? Every single day, I want to do something that's going to advance. I think probably most of your listeners had the book or listen, at least looked the book, Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
So yeah, so by Napoleon Hill. So in that book, there is this, it's a self-confidence formula. And so I don't know if you know Ann McNeil, she is the masterminder's mastermind. She's actually in the book, kind of doing some of this stuff. She has built this kind of multi-million-dollar business as a woman in construction, but also has these other chains that are out there. And one of the things she does is she has people write out that self-confidence formula like 90 times over 90 days and see what the results are. And so I'm kind of going that practice right now. And one of it, in point number 5, really talks about, I think I got it someplace here. So I was just writing it out this morning before I started. And it talks about, let's see what it says. I'm going to read it verbatim here. On point number 5, it says, I realize that no wealth or position can long endure unless built upon truth and justice. So therefore, when engage in no transaction which does not benefit all whom it affects, right? So because of that, I think we've lost a lot of that, right? We lost that. We think that we are going to long endure.
Yeah.
And we're not. And that's the certainty, that is the illusion that we have, that what we're building is going to last in our lifetime instead of building it to last in somebody else's lifetime. And that's the difference between a finite mind and an infinite mind.
So what do you see? What do you see that comes next? What are the things that you think, the trends that you think are going to take hold from COVID, the things that are here to stay, and maybe the things that maybe won't? I mean, what do you think business owners need to be and leaders need to be prepared for going forward?
Yeah, a great question. I think first of all, when I say kind of not going back to normal, the things that we used to know, I think some things are gone because systems have pushed others out. So think about how we do our shopping now. Grubhub, we're doing curbside pickups. A lot of things aren't going back to the normal way of which we have experienced restaurants before. We're social distancing in restaurants if we're going at all. At the beaches, we're supposed to be social distancing. All those things are happening. I think those things in the business community of brick and mortar might be a shift happening there, right? Because we thought before this happened that I can't send workers home. I can't have anybody work from home because I'll be less productive. We're finding out we're either equally productive or more productive by doing things at home. We're making more revenue staying at home. I think that there's a danger of complacency because the normal will be complacency. This will become the standard, and I will begin to go back to my old habits of how I used to act before this time actually hit, and I'll forget what I went through. I wrote this book called 10 Power Stories to Impact Any Leader, Journey Your Way to Leadership Success, specifically because we're not journaling our stories. And we're going to forget what it was like to go through this time period, and we will not have passed it down from generation to generation. I think the second thing that we are in this moment of what we need to be thinking about is, besides how we got through it, is what are we learning by us being in this uncertain times. If I can't rely on what my knowledge base is and what I went to school for, or the lived experience that I have, if I can't rely on that to help me through, I know I had to build teams so I could have more of a depth and breadth to help the company survive in this time. Mm-hmm. People are having multiple meetings, daily meetings, just check-ins, trying to figure out how we're going to survive. I talked to one individual on a day-to-day basis. How we're going to shift on a day-to-day basis. What's the new thing coming out day-to-day? And not one person can do that. You need a team around you. So we need to take that mindset also into the future. I think also it's understanding that we don't know everything. I'm doing a whole conversation, I've done with several companies now on the Black Lives Matter, because we find that most CEO executives, white males, don't know how to have the conversation.
Yeah.
And it's been out there for eons, right? Since the founding of our country. But how can we don't know how to have the conversation now?
Yeah.
And so you're looking at it as a check the box. If I can just check the box, we can move forward. But this isn't a check the box moment. It's not. I mean, it's how far do you want to go down the rabbit hole and how much do you want to change? And the reason we're failing is because we're unwilling to look at other help from outside in. So I'm helping those CEOs, those executives, primarily those and kind of white male CEO executives, to have this conversation because it helps all of us grow, not from just me, but I have a guy named David Grevenberg. He's the CEO of the Commonwealth Games. That Commonwealth used to have over a third of the population of the world under that control. And so we are having these really hard conversations, but I always ask the question, why are the conversations hard? And so it really gets us into ourselves. So we begin to look inward to us instead of blaming others for the systems, the problems, and everything. What am I doing about this? So I try to bring it right back to that focal point.
Think about where the world would be right now if we all just asked ourselves, what could I do to fix the situation, rather than blaming somebody else to fix the situation? I mean, it would be a whole different world and a whole different subject. One question I do have here from a viewer, and then it's hard to believe it's almost time to wrap up. Is
no.
I know what's the biggest? What is the best advice you have for business owners and leaders right now? If you could give them one tip, what would it be?
To move quickly through your redefining moment.
Okay. Explain that a little bit.
Let me unpack that a little bit. Okay. So I know we don't have that much time. I'll try to go fast. Think of three buckets. 1, 2, 3, right? The first bucket is our fear bucket. So what was I going through when I had my amputation? Fear. It's all about me. My wife is going to leave me. My son's not going to see me as his dad. I'm going to lose my job. Me. But there are other people too. There are other people that are out there. Other people who are believing for me what I can or cannot do, which is based upon what they believe they could or could not do if they were in my situation. So that voice is in my head too. Then third is society. Society is dictating to me my belief system. What did I listen to, or who did I listen to in society that made believe my wife was going to leave, or John Jr. would not see me as his father, right? So who am I listening to? So then we go up this kind of the ladder on the second bucket. We believe we are rebuilding our lives, but that's really not true, because had I overcome the amputation of my left leg, I'd have my leg back. But I'm thinking I'm going to go back to normal.
Yeah.
Right? So then that brings us to this redefining moment. I'm still building upon that platform. And the redefining moment is the choice that I had to make in the hospital, the choice that we all have to make. And what are the fears after we've identified them and where they've come from? What fears are we going to release, let go of? What fear are we going to amputate to embrace this new normal? So we got to get through that redefining moment fast. And that equals our liberation side. So now we begin to learn how to walk again, maybe run again. We start getting back our strength, and we create inside of ourselves a resolve. We're resolute. No longer are we going to go back there. You need to catch up to where I am now. And that equals our liberation. But not for us, like Napoleon Hill was saying, is to build legacy for somebody else to come forward. So that's the mindset that I try to share with all of the business community that comes to me, or anybody that's asking me a question like that.
Well, John, how do people find out more about you? Where do they go to learn more about you, your story, the programs and strategies that you offer?
Thanks. JohnRegister.com is the place. I'm trying to build it out so everybody can find everything that you just said there. But that's, you can find me there, and that'll go give you all my social media channels. I'm pretty much on Instagram, LinkedIn is probably the most one, and YouTube, some others. But JohnRegister.com is the place. So.
All right. Well, thank you, John. You have been a fantastic guest today. We're going to give you this recording to put on your website. We'll house it on our website as well, so viewers can continue to come back to it. But thank you again for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening. And we'll see you next week for another guest and another opportunity to learn what you need to do to turn uncertainty to your competitive advantage.